the world just like is what it is and people are who they are. But who are you? Are you really the type of person who is going to walk around freaking mad all day or like bent out of shape because of something some guy said? Like, no, I don't want to see that for you. I know that there's more to life than just walking around angry and constantly triggered. Hello, and welcome to the Empress Podcast. I am your host, Jessica, known in the online space as Jess the Empress. I started this podcast to help you be present with yourself, cope with chaos, and simplify your life. I do this by combining psychology, behavioral science, and the tarot. I have a background in mental health, specifically a master's in clinical social work from USC, and I'm a professional tarot reader. So get ready to have a nurturing, creative, and empowering experience with me as we use practical magic. Hey love, before we get to today's episode, I want to ask you to rate and review my podcast. Giving me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts would mean the world to me. I love knowing who's listening and what everyone is getting from the episode, so please take a moment of your time to share your thoughts, and I look forward to reading your reviews soon. Hey there, coffee lovers. Are you tired of settling for boring coffee? I have a treat for you. Today's episode is brought to you by Heartwork Coffee Bar, your one-stop destination for exceptional coffee experiences. Whether you're a coffee connoisseur or just someone who appreciates a great cup of joe, Heartwork Coffee Bar is here to elevate your coffee game to new heights. At Heartwork Coffee Bar, they take pride in their craft because each batch is carefully roasted to perfection, ensuring that every sip is a symphony of flavor. From the rich and the robust to the light and fruity, they have a coffee blend for every palate. And here's the best part. For you amazing podcast listeners, Heartwork Coffee Bar is offering an exclusive 10% discount on your purchase. Just use the code Empress10 at checkout and you'll save big on your order. Why settle for ordinary when you can indulge in the extraordinary coffee from Heartwork Coffee Bar? Remember to use code Empress10 for that special 10% discount and treat yourself to the coffee experience that you deserve. Don't miss out on this fantastic offer. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks to Heartwork Coffee Bar for making today's episode possible. Now go grab your favorite mug, brew a fresh cup, and enjoy the podcast with the perfect companion, Heartwork Coffee Bar. Cheers. Hey, Bestie. What's up? How are you? I hope you're well. I hope you are taking care of yourself. Cheers. I've got my coffee. Of course, it's a Heartwork coffee, as you know, in this cute little pink tumbler. I have it in this color, and then I have a little white one for like the cortados, So cute. I'm inspired today after a conversation with one of my clients, and I was like, my girl, you are spending like way too long in your trigger. No judgment, but I feel like now is the time to really review how you're basically like reacting to these things unfolding in your life. Because when I was like doing a check-in with her, she was basically saying how like the entire day got away from her and she was just like a, a hot mess. And I was like, okay, not a problem because I've been a hot mess. I will have my moments of being a hot mess. Like we're all going to have that issue from time to time. But when she was like telling me about her day, I didn't hear anywhere in there where she was like doing anything to actively let the trigger go. She was just like noticing that she was getting angry. And then that was kind of it. And there's like these issues kept coming up for her. And so I was just like, all right, I have a process for you to use. I use it. I was taught this, and so I can share with you guys and you can use it. I was taught this by a therapist. So for me, it works. I think everybody does have a sort of like a different way of learning about their triggers. But if you have no strategy whatsoever, you're going to want to use this one because having a strategy is probably better than not having a strategy, right? When it comes to like the things that pissed you off. And like I used to get angry all the time. I used to walk around and I would just be miserable. Like I was miserable internally, but I kind of like allowed myself to get angry at everything else that was outside of me, whether it was like a global issue, which is something I can't control, or it was like something someone said, which again is like something I can't control, I would get so upset and I would be like in my head about it the whole freaking day. So ever since I started implementing this strategy, I have way more awareness of the trigger, but I don't feel so activated by it. Or when I feel very activated by it, I don't sit in it all day. So there's like two major differences that have happened in my life that's positive change. And so you have to learn how to influence your triggers and have control over them. Let me be clear. Let me be clear. You can't control whether or not you get triggered as a basic thing. There is going to be lots of things in life that are going to like pop off and you're not even going to know that that was something that could have made you mad. This is like why it's so important that we are in tune with our bodies so that way we can like feel that activation or that trigger. And triggers can be on a spectrum. It can be something that you feel like instantaneously and it's like burning hot, or it could be an uneasy feeling or a slight anxiety or racing heartbeat, right? So there's a lot of different ways that we could define trigger. So we're not always going to be able to control whether or not we're having the trigger in the moment. This is not about avoiding your triggers either. Okay. Because if you're trying to avoid your triggers, you're living in your shadow, and it's never going to work. You're going to find yourself the way I found myself, which was like freaking miserable because there's like underlining needs that you have. That's why everything's like bothering you on the outside. It's all this external stuff. That's like a literal cry of help for you to pay attention to you and what you need. Because the world just like is what it is, and people are who they are. But who are you? Are you really the type of person who is going to walk around freaking mad all day? Or like been out of shape because of something some guy said? Like, no, I don't want to see that for you. I know that there's more to life than just walking around angry and constantly triggered. In the Hellacious Hotties Academy, we get into this formula on a really deep level, but I will give you the overview today. The first step is recognizing that you're triggered. Okay. So when we're stepping into our shadow work, or when we're a person who is aware, we're looking at all the things in our life, not just the positive things. We're looking at the positive and the negative. We're looking at the highs and we're looking at the lows and like everything in between. Okay. We're aware of what's going on internally and how we're perceiving the world externally. So we're not going to lie to ourselves. Like step number one is be honest. Acknowledge that you have the trigger. In the session with this client, I was like, girl, but it is bothering you because this is the third time we've talked about it in session, and no judgment. It's my job to just reflect back to you like, girl, you're telling me one thing, but we've talked about this again, like multiple times, which tells me like you are bothered by it. And let me just validate, like, that's okay. You're allowed to be bothered by whatever is bothering you. I want to know more. I want to know more about this. So step one is being honest with ourselves, because when we can be honest with ourselves, we're having a face-to-face conversation with us. We're looking ourselves directly into our own heart, into our own soul. And we're being like, you know what? I see that you are a little distressed right now. What's going on? We're checking in. That is an act of love. It is not an act of love to lie to ourselves. It is not an act of love to act like, oh, I'm just so cool. I don't ever get triggered. Or like, I am above, I've healed. I don't get triggered anymore. Like, okay, can we not? Can we not? Like, lying is not the vibe. Number two is the deep breath. With the deep breath practice, and I said practice because it's a key word, it takes time to remember to take a deep breath. But it is step number two, and it's a useful step number two because without it, it's going to be harder to successfully go through this entire process. The deep breath is important because it helps you calm down, not just emotionally, but your whole physiology changes when you actually take in a deep breath. You give your mind the opportunity, you give your brain the opportunity to relax a little and to just remember that you don't have to be in fight or flight over this trigger. More than likely, your life is not at stake and you're not going to die. The deep breath is very calming and very grounding. And your deep breath should be something like an inhale through the nose and an exhale through the mouth. Now, if it's a super wild trigger, sometimes you need to take like 10 deep breaths. Do whatever you got to do to settle down. But deep breathing, nonetheless, is the second step. Step number three is reflect. So you're going to want to ask yourself, what do you need right now? So you're going to turn toward yourself and say, literally, what do I need right now? So you've taken your deep breath, you've noticed that something is pissing you off or making you feel wild, and you're like, what do I really need? You're putting the attention back on you because you're the one who's in need right now, right? So you're going to check in. What is it that you need? The other question you can ask yourself is, what am I learning about myself? What am I understanding more about me in this whole situation? Like, what about this person or this thing is making me feel this type of way? And then the last question you want to ask is, what can I do about it? When you ask, what can I do about it? You set yourself up for one of the other steps I'm going to get into in a moment. So, understanding that you have some power here is important as well, because a lot of times before we believe that we were helpless to our triggers and there was nothing we could do. But you're asking yourself the question, what can I do about this situation? Then you're going to release. Okay. We're going to release it. We are going to acknowledge that what has happened, and we feel some type of way. But because it happened and we feel some type of way, we can let it go. We know enough. That's all we need to be aware of, and we're good to go. This step is so important, especially if you're releasing control over something you never even had control over before. Again, this really, really reinforces empowerment, which I love. You guys know I'm just trying to be the most empowered version of myself. Again, I don't want to keep walking around like angry all day. I know my client doesn't. And if you're in this position, I know you don't either. It's why you clicked on this video. It's like why you're here. And then the last step is action. So you're going to go do something, whether it's like, what can I do about this? Like you're going to take that aligned action, or you're just going to do something else to help yourself continue de escalating and distracting yourself from the main problem here. And let me say this, taking any type of action is usually better than no action. Like if you have a bunch of stuff in front of you that you need to get done, like the dishes, like, laundry or whatever, you can absolutely do that while working through a trigger, while you're still feeling some type of way. The other reason that this was like such a problem for my client is because she was getting so activated that she wasn't actually following through with like the other things that she had in front of her. So it was really, really impacting her. Like these triggers were really impacting her availability to do like her normal stuff throughout the day. I mentioned that a lot of us have learned just to stay in a triggered cycle and never understanding how to release it. So it's not your fault that you didn't learn how, but you've literally learned how today. So now you need to go put this plan in action so that way you don't stay in that loop. And I think society at large makes it really difficult for us to get out of this loop because there's just so much noise. There's just so much noise. Like you just don't have a second to take to yourself unless you actually take it to yourself, unless you actually implement this. You're going to walk around just feeling so activated all day long. And honestly, like that's such a draining place to be, bestie. Like, ugh. I'm not perfect and my client isn't perfect. The practices that we do every day, they lead to a lot of progress in our lives because we're willing to take that deep breath and we're willing to reflect. We are then willing to understand what can we do about it. We're going to let the trigger go and then we're going to take action on the things that are in front of us. That really is the key to overcoming the toxic cycle of just like constantly being triggered. I want to see you thriving. Okay. So, this is why I'm sharing this message. If you know someone else that would really benefit from it, please pass it on to them as well. Another thing I'm going to ask you guys, could you like screenshot when you're watching this or listening to it and then tag me on Instagram? Because I miss seeing you guys. And I would just really appreciate it. I love knowing who's listening. As always, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have an amazing rest of your weekend and I will talk with you later. Bye.